Hey, what's going on, everybody? A lot of you guys have been asking for my opinion on this whole Lifetime movie biopic that was done on Aaliyah, that was produced by Wendy Williams, and it recently aired on Lifetime the other night, I believe this Monday. And first of all, let me say that this movie it was rough to watch. It was trash. I'm gonna just be honest. It was horrible. And I knew it was going to be a problem when they said Wendy Williams was the producer of the movie. I said, oh, okay, this is going to be bad here. But, where do I start with this movie? First of all, let me say that it was a lot of controversy getting this movie made. First they had the chick that I believe won the dancing competition or whatever. She was supposed to play Aaliyah, but Aaliyah's parents didn't approve of that. They didn't like the script. They didn't like her playing it. It was just a big mess. So she opted out. She said, I don't want to do the film, which I don't blame her, because if I was doing a biopic on somebody in the family didn't agree with me doing it, or didn't agree with the overall production of the movie, I probably wouldn't be involved with it, because it's just going to be, a wreck at the end of the day, because the family is not deeply involved into the movie. So they went out. They had to hurry up and find somebody. They went out and they found this girl named Alexander Shipp. Now, when it comes to the visual, they didn't do too bad on it. I believe this chick is mixed. I think she's white and black. She can pass for Aaliyah. But they didn't do too bad as far as the visual effects. She had the slim waist and everything, the complexion. So I have no complaints with that. But when it came to the actual production of the movie, first of all, let me go to the beginning of the movie. They spent about 2 or 3 minutes on Aaliyah's childhood, and the next thing I knew, I'm sitting back and she's in the booth with R. Kelly, and I'm like, what the hell? What happened? How do you go from singing at a talent show, and then 2 minutes later you in the booth with R. Kelly making the album? And I felt like that was strange, about this movie here, because I feel like when you're making a biopic about somebody, the childhood of the person that you're doing a biopic of should be deeply incorporated into the movie, because people's childhood reflects who they are as an adult, whether it's in a negative or whether it's in a positive way. You have to go back to the childhood, and I feel like they didn't spend enough time really kind of getting the viewers involved of who Aaliyah actually was, her upbringing, how she was as a child. They really didn't dig too deep into that. It was just, they showed a brief thing about her being a kid, and then next thing you know, she was recording a goddamn album. So I thought that was a little odd. Another thing that was strange about this movie, they didn't use any of the original songs that Aaliyah did. There was no 4-page letter, no One in a Million, no We Need a Resolution or whatever. There was no none of the original tracks that Aaliyah did were in the movie. What they did is they used generic songs. Like I think they did a sample of the Marvin Gaye record, and she was just singing all these songs that had really nothing to do with Aaliyah. And part of that probably was, copyright reasons, and me working in the industry, I know how important that is, making sure things are cleared, making sure you have the rights to use certain songs or samples or whatever, because you can get your ass sued off if you don't clear things. That's what happened with that whole Robin Thicke thing. You have to get things clear. You got to pay people their snaps to use their their musical intellect or whatever you're trying to use. You have to get things clear. So I mean, that probably was an issue with it. But it's like, if you're not going to use any of her music, it's like it doesn't really feel like it's a Aaliyah movie. And then, the vocal tones, I felt like this chick here, she had a very popish type of sound. Aaliyah wasn't a strong vocalist, but she had more soul. And this chick sounded like a complete pop artist. She didn't really have her swag. I mean, the wardrobe was cool. I give them the props on the wardrobe. They didn't do bad on that. But, she didn't really embody who Aaliyah really was. It was like kind of like they dressed her up to look kind of like Aaliyah, but she didn't really get into the character of Aaliyah and who she really was. So I thought that was a problem. No, she didn't have none of her style, none of her swag, and none of her movement. I mean, It was strange. It was painful to watch. Then you had a couple of celebrities came out. Timberland, who everybody knows, Aaliyah. He worked directly with Aaliyah. Him and Missy were the producers on her second album, One in a Million. He didn't like. He said it was he was trashing it all on Facebook, social media. So I mean, he didn't like it. I'm sure it was a lot of other people who, worked with Aaliyah that thought the movie was terrible. But I mean, I don't want to give too much away, of the movie for you guys that haven't seen it. But it was a trashy movie. It wasn't done well. The movie seemed rushed. The ending of the movie, not to get too much away, but I didn't feel, how can I put this? When someone dies, I think part of being, a artist of film, and you have to be able to capture the emotion of that person dying, and I think you have to have a way of conveying that through the screen, so when the viewer is looking at the movie, they actually feel something of the passing of Aaliyah. And it was like when they got to that point, the movie was like, okay, that's it. So I mean, it was just, the movie was just, it was terrible. Then they had the guy playing R. Kelly, his cockeyed ass. He looked a little odd. But then, granted, I do think people were paying too much on the visual appearance. I will say that because it's always important to have people who can actually convey the characters than have people who look exactly like the characters, but their acting chops or bad. And that's another thing. The acting was bad in here. They had a chick playing Missy Elliott. She looked about 150 pounds lighter than what Missy Elliott looked back then when she was working with Aaliyah. Now, we all know, when Missy Elliott first came out, she was a chunky girl. Extremely talented, extremely captioned. She had stage presence. You wanted to watch her. Her music was dope. Missy is one of the greatest female hip hop artists of all time. But let's be real, she was chunky. How the hell you guys get somebody that's 150 pounds lighter than how she looked back then? So I mean, a lot of things was off about this. It just a lot of things were comical. Her voice sounded like she was singing at a karaoke bar. It was just bad. And there's been rumors out that I believe some production studio, they're making another Aaliyah. I don't know if this is true. It's just a rumor, but this one got so much backlash, and just people were so unhappy with it. I think they're trying to make another one. Just kind of like basically a better version of the Aaliyah movie, but not with Lifetime, or not with Wendy the Man Williams being the producer of it. Because I mean, she didn't do a good job on this, and I saw a show the next day. And she tried to play it off and say, yeah, I heard all the criticism, but everyone has an opinion. Yes, everyone does have an opinion, just like you have an opinion on everybody's goddamn life in the media. But I noticed she tried to, kind of dumb that down. Now, we all know Wendy Williams talks out of the side of her neck. I remember she threw Method Man's, woman under the bus, exposed personal information about her. She does it day in and day out. But when somebody criticized her, she seemed like she got her feelings hurt. But it is what it is. That's karma for your ass, because you come out here and you disrespect people day in and day out. So, I mean, it's just karma for Wendy Williams. And, the movie that you produced was terrible. I'm just being honest with you. Damn near all America was honest with you. It was terrible. It was horrible. Don't ever do another movie again. Don't ever try to produce anything, because you are terrible at it. But that's all I gotta say. I do hope they make another remake of the Aaliyah movie. I hope they take their time with it. Get things correct, because I mean, the people ripped this movie to shreds, and it was that bad. People ripped it to shreds. But that's all I gotta say on it. If you guys saw the movie, give me your feedback on what you thought about the movie, whether you thought it was good. There was a few people sprinkled here and there that thought this movie was actually good. But give me your feedback on it. I'm out. Y'all gotta do better. We need better movies out here.